Hi, I'm a tribe from Argus Media, and we are going to be talking about the future of guarantees of origin at this roundtable. So today we are joined by David from STX, Aude from EEX, Dania from NValue, and Emine from EPEX SPOT. So I guess, David, as you're in the firing line first up,
I start
and talk about.
Well, thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Ceder. I'm the manager of the Geodesk at STX Commodities. Just very briefly, for you not familiar with STX, founded in 2005, as throughout the years developed into becoming a fairly major trader in environmental commodities. We're just over 550 employees, over 11 offices, and active in ESCs, biofuels, biogas, and carbon. Given today's topic, we are 35 fully dedicated people to the geo product, and we trade around 400 terawatt hours on an annual basis. Last year, that was 430 terawatt hours. Briefly about the market, we've had now three, I think, very interesting years for the geo market. 2022, we saw the largest rally we've seen yet to date. That led to us hitting the 10 euro mark for the very first time. That was due to a temporary yet substantial reduction in hydro production. 2023, also a year with large movement, but on the opposite side, essentially, we saw a heavy reduction in prices due to a very good production year. 2024, today, market is moving compared to historical levels, is moving fairly healthy, but compared to the last 2 years, it's moving a lot less, of course. As a matter of fact, we are on point to be having the best production year since the inception of the geo market, where we forecast an end of year balance of about 1,050 terawatt hours. So there we're seeing a sort of 50% increase on hydro, a 30% increase on solar. So a big production year. Overall, the market is maturing. Maybe us sitting here today is an evidence of that. The market is becoming more educated. It's changing counterparties' hedging behaviors. Simply put, more counterparties have a strategy for the green exposures. Because the recent years, market movements, having had an ad hoc sort of approach to it, could have been seen as a very costly approach. And you'll be surprised how many counterparties actually now start thinking about having a strategy for their exposures. And again, having seen a price range going from 50 cents to 10 euros in the last 3 years, I think that makes a lot of sense, clearly. Clients are also looking forward to expand their sort of hedging tools. We see further traction on bespoke pricing structures. We see traction on options. Again, makes sense. 3 years, high volatility, and further price transparency. Corporates are increasing their market directly, increasing their market and increasing their market share. Having previously been served by their utility or by from their power supplier, they are now approaching the market directly. And this ever so growing demand tends to have slightly more specific requests in how what they need and how they act in the market. And that can be down to anything from the actual production profile to even down to the settlements term. As a matter of fact, I think maybe some of you might know the strictest corporate standard, RE100, forces corporates today to buy not only newer assets, but also from a geographically restricted area. In the overall, the market is becoming more transparent. Again, I think us sitting here is a good evidence of that. We see more pricing data, there are more platforms available, there's even an exchange available. So today, I think the market is, as we know, market is the largest it's ever been in terms of volumes, in terms of transactions, in terms of market participants. And I think we can see the market moving perhaps in two directions. In one way, we do see a push towards further commoditization, which of course will benefit hedging opportunities. It will benefit speculation. And on the other side, we see maybe a push towards more perhaps geo getting close to the underlying electricity, perhaps a more granular environment where players will have more specific requests, either for perhaps voluntary purposes or maybe even compliance purposes. In how they will develop against each other, I don't think one will overshadow the other. They might most likely develop in a coherent way and a mutually beneficial way, but of course that's something perhaps we can discuss further here today. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks, David. Aude, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Aude Filippi. I'm from EEX. I'm Director for Business Development for Sustainability Markets and Gas as well. It's been now 14 years that I'm in the company, and I'm particularly happy to be speaking about GEOs now, because I really started on GEOs some time ago already, and I really saw the market growing and maturing, and I'm very proud of the journey already that we have made on EEX group level, but I'm pretty sure that this is only still the start of it. So here you have a slide just to because it's probably easier to kind of see a bit more what we do on the geo side through an image, but I'm gonna say one word about this. So basically, we started entering the geo market quite a long time ago with our registry offering. So EEX is especially issuing body in France for quite some years now, and we also have a company called Grexel, part of the group, which is offering registry business kind of in most now European countries, either for power guarantees of origin, gas guarantees of origin, hydrogen guarantees of origin, heating and cooling guarantees of origin as well. So I think we are really covering a very, very wide spectrum here. We also, starting in 2019, started primary auctions for guarantees of origin in France. So Italy was first, but France was very close after them. And we are now, we see that there is more and more participant to these primary auctions, and that we see a lot of interest those last years. And a few years ago, but even 1 year and a half ago, where you will tell even a bit better, Emine, we started the spot, pan-European spot auction together with EPEX. So Emine will talk about it. I will not disclose too many things here, but that's basically, we wanted to have a spot offering, combining specificities and genericities. And we are very proud that we have already launched this market indeed. And now, and this is what we will probably talk even a bit more about today, is that we just launched together with our partner Incubex our Geo Futures market. And so the launch was on the 2nd of September, so it's really fresh news. And we are very happy about the start of this market. As David said, I'd say we have seen indeed this development of the geo market maturing, seeing more and more need for hedging. Indeed, when prices start to be very, very much volatile, people start thinking about, maybe I should hedge my position, maybe I should even think of indeed clearing. So that's the reason why we thought, and we had a lot of requests from market parties, that indeed launching a geo futures market would be important. So basically, what we hope to bring with this offer is indeed security, is indeed transparency, and also to try to indeed bring all counterparts together. So we have today, we want to basically make use of our member base on all other commodities, and they can also join the geo market quite easily. So hopefully we can also help growing the market and profit, and that the geo market would mature even more now that an exchange is offering geo futures. One word on geo futures, what is the market basically? What we have designed as products. We have designed 4 products which are really relatively standardized, with one physical delivery in January of each year. So we have year plus 1, year plus 2, year plus 3, and the contracts are all renewable: hydro, wind, solar. And these are from, GEOs are accepted from most interconnected AIB countries. We really wanted to have at first an offer which was enabling market parties to hedge their position. We have decided to first launch a limited number of contracts to concentrate a bit liquidity, to make sure that our offering was as clear as possible and easy to handle. We could in the future add additional contracts, but for the moment we are very happy that we have these contracts, and we have seen indeed in the last days a really very, very good interest from the markets. We have really, I think we have had more than 80 requests already of members wanting to participate to the market. Today we have 30 members fully onboarded, and I'd say it's only the start. We also know that launching a market on 2nd of September, just after August, is always, you need to start a bit. And really, we are very, very happy because from the first day, we see trades, we see a lot of different counterparts. We also see the order book being quite filled by our market makers most of the time. So it means that when you look at the screen, it's rarely empty, and you can see really orders and very good reference prices today. So I think already we are very happy about this. We have, so I didn't have the last, I don't know if there were some last trades in the last minutes, but until yesterday we had a bit more than 350 gigs traded, which we believe is really a good start because we had really a handful of days, and already people are using the platform, both on exchange, both on screen, and also through brokers, through OTC clearing. So I'd say very promising start, only a start, but very happy about this. Yeah, I'd say that's what I wanted to say mostly, and happy to give the floor to my colleagues.
Dania, do you want to tip in there?
Yes, so I'm Dania Piccioli. I'm Chief Investment Officer for NValue. Also very shortly, NValue is a company founded in 2008 in Switzerland. Now we have 5 offices globally and about 40 people. We are also mostly a renewable energy solution provider, so we trade also with guarantees of origin for both electricity and renewable gas, also the climate commodities, and we do also power trading in Europe. And we started also as really focused with guarantees of origin, so I grew up with that as well. It's been now 14 years, and we have seen the market changing a lot. So when we started, it was literally everything was very untransparent and only bilateral, the OTC, and now it has developed a lot. David said it all, so I won't repeat it again. But basically what we notice now is that the geo market, it looks like voluntary, but in the end is driven by the directive in Europe, for the Renewable Energy Directive. So our historical clients are mostly energy distribution companies which has to communicate to the end customers the mix of electricity that they are supplying to them and the renewable share. And they are doing this with guarantees of origin since the very beginning. So that's since 2008, but the demand grew a lot there. So there is much more, they are much more, the end customers are much more aware today, and they are demanding for this product, while back at the time it was just nice to have. Now it's kind of mandatory. And on the other side, there is all the demand that is driven by corporates that are buying a loan. So they don't pass through energy distribution companies, but they do them alone. And today, what is really, it is still a very untransparent market, because everything, for us that we are in the market, for us, everything is clear because we have brokers and we have auctions and platform, but for the most of the clients, they don't have access to all these informations and these marketplaces. So it is still very intransparent, and everything is a lot is traded B2B or via brokers. But now there are more auctions or more exchanges, so it becomes also more accessible to clients and also to producers. Another thing that changed is the value of the guarantees of origin. So when it was like 20 cents, even 6 cents, back at the time. For the producers, it was really something not important, and most of them didn't even apply to have guarantees of origin issued. This is also something that changed. So we have now all producers that are having GOs issued because it represents a fair value overall compared to the electricity price. So for them as well, there is this opportunity to have further access to the market. So I would say, yeah, we are entering like a maturity level and also commoditization. Also, I agree with that too. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to see how the new what the future is gonna bring.
Emine, do you want to go next?
Thank you. So my name is Emine Sisman, and I work in the product development team at EPEX SPOT. I'm head of environmental markets. And as a leading spot power exchange in Europe, we are a very innovation-driven company. Our key ambition is to actively serve the energy transition, and it's really in this mindset that we have been developing products in our department to facilitate the integration of renewables in the power market. But then also now in this mindset, we have launched the pan-European GOs market 2 years ago. So I think now that we celebrate this month the 2nd anniversary of our pan-European GOs market, we can really be proud of what we have achieved so far. And in a nutshell, what is our market about? So basically what we do is we run monthly multilateral spot auctions. So our auctions take place once a month. They are multilateral, which unlike primary auctions, where the state is the unique seller and market participants can buy guarantees of origin that are subsidized. In our market, market participants can buy and sell GOs within one single auction. And it's a spot auction because the GOs that are tradable are already issued. So there mostly we cover the current year, but then when we have the beginning of the year, it can also be the previous or N-1. And so it's an auction because we believe that in the very beginning to build up the liquidity and the market activity in general, that it's beneficial to have an auction that bundles all, you know, that is kind of the, let's say, meeting point or time of the market to then come together. And what is very particular about our market, and there maybe we can show the next slide, is that especially on the buy side, market participants can either be very generic or very specific. What does it mean? It basically means that a market participant, I mean, a buyer can say, actually, I don't mind which GO I end up with. I will just put my price expectation. So they will connect to the trading system. They will then go through the different dimensions we have. So technology, country, subsidy regime, and production month. And then they click all 4 times and they put the volume and the price that they expect. Or they could be very specific and say, no, actually, I really need, let's say, hydro from France without subsidy and from March of 24. So all these orders are then bundled in one single auction. And then we, after the 15 minutes after the auction, we publish the prices on the indices for each product combination that was matched in the auction. So you see that there are quite a few product combinations possible. And what is also specific about the exchange offer is, of course, that we offer a fully secured trading environment, which means we take care together with EEX and ECC of the clearing, the settlement, and the delivery of the GOs so that there is no default risk or anything related to it, because you also know that this has become even more important now that the values of the GOs are rising, right? So, yeah, this is our GOs market in a nutshell, let's say.
Thank you so much. So I guess with the recent launch of the futures platform, what expectations do you have? And we could start with you, David.
Yeah, no, no, I think, I mean, look at my own business, our own business, and again, we are an outright liquidity provider, right? That's where it comes from. We trade 420 terawatt hours annually, and that is outright as a liquidity provider that we help out. Can be asset owners that are looking to maximize their revenues on their asset they have in place or about to commission. It can be with corporates that you tend to look at maybe more of a global solution, right? Very, very specific. Same thing, obviously, with a developer who has a specific asset they want to maximize their value for. And then you have the midstream market, where obviously the big chunk of the market is. And then the question is, then where does a sort of very standardized product come in, and what role does it fill? I think it's still, if you want to really scale it, it's still a bit challenging, because if you look at the large part of the volumes, as I say, the midstream, the utilities and the traders, at first point, it looks like a very standardized profile, but they tend to want to have more of a specific quarter. It might be that they only want 6 months of the year. They might want to have specific settlement terms. And that's why also previously we've seen a push to maybe put it on a platform. It struggles to get the liquidity. So that is a challenge. If again, from the point we have, the role we have in the market, what we do see is we go back 3 years. Like I told you, we've had 3 very different years, right? Going from €2 to €10 down to 50 cents. And obviously, depending on what trades you would have done during that price development, it's very, I guess, easy to say that you will have had quite some exposure on your counterparties. And I saw that personally, right? Back in a couple of years back, we saw larger counterparties really struggling because their credit lines were so much under pressure. So whether you were a medium-sized counterparty or even among the largest, you were maybe down to trade with a handful of counterparties, if even. And that, of course, limits your way of operating, your trading capabilities. So if now we were in a quite much more or less volatile market, of course, in 2024. But if we return to, which we of course will do, I think in the not distant future, if we return to a more volatile market, then having the ability to clear it on the exchange is of course a very beneficial option, because essentially you can keep on trading counterparties, the market can keep on being efficient while the credit risk sits elsewhere. So I think that's where at least I see the biggest opportunity.
Aude, do you want to come in on that?
I'd say, I think indeed, as we explained a bit before, the market has matured, and we have, it's been already some time that we heard market parties saying, please launch a market for that. Please, indeed, first in standardized products so that we can hedge ourselves. So for security, for transparency reason, but also indeed to try to even widen the spectrum of participants in the market. So what I would hope, and I hope that indeed we will succeed in this, and I think the first days have been really very promising on this, is to bring indeed more participants to the table. That's one thing we want to achieve. Second is indeed bringing standardization on the market. We are really working hand in hand with brokers or liquidity provider, because indeed, as a futures exchange, we will not provide very, very detailed contracts. And in the guarantees of origin sector, there are so many little differences that I think the business is very much complementary on the future side, that indeed, we want to address this big chunk of the market and make sure that you are able to hedge yourselves. Because I'd say what we also see is that generally when there is a movement of prices, you still see quite a lot of correlation in technologies, with or without subsidies. And so generally still the market is going in the same direction. Of course, there can be some spreads, but I'd say it's going in the same direction. So I'd say if you want to hedge yourself, you can, even if you want something very specific, you can hedge yourself on the exchange on a less specific contract. So I'd say that's a bit how we imagine our futures market. And I think there is really a lot of potential there. Of course, people need to start using it and get used to it, but the feedback was already extremely positive. So yeah, very happy to see it developing further.
Dania?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that has been said, and also I think the geo market as per it is today, and I still see like that for, let's say, at least the midterm. As David says, so, and also there is an entire world of demand that is very specific. Countries where you have like monthly disclosure, like France, countries where you have more granularity product offers. In Germany, there was a product that offered 15 minutes granularity back in the days already. So it's a very, there are countries that are not linked to Europe, like Switzerland is trading on its own because it's not linked to Europe. So it's very, I mean, it's very different, yes, and there are very different products. And companies like NValue and STX as well, we are kind of a bridge right now between something that is more standardized and then the niche products. And we can also we help also clients hedging themselves. So we provide more specific products to them while we can handle the other leg thanks to exchange and auctions, let's say.
That kind of brings us on to, I guess, granularity. And Emine, do you want to talk about where you see kind of more granularity coming in?
Yes, so I think, well, it's kind of one of the hot topics in certain conferences or over the past year too. And in general, I can say, I mean, we welcome these discussions because it goes in the right direction. But then, of course, we are also quite cautious because, like, also for our market, I mean, now that we have the, let's say, second anniversary, we're in very extensive exchange with our members. And we see, I mean, here we have to go step by step, right? We can observe on our platform already. I mean, you see, we have the production month that we implemented. And this means that members can trade up to a specific month. And we see that this is quite used by our French market participants because they have the monthly disclosure obligation. But then, to be honest, most of the rest, they are more on a yearly basis. So then going from yearly to 24/7 would be a very radical step. But we believe that if we go step by step, of course, this is something that could be feasible and visible in the future. But for now, the feedback we receive from our members or, you know, any other stakeholders on the market is that, okay, we shouldn't go too fast and be cautious when we do these changes too quickly. So here what we do is we continue our discussions with our members, but also we follow the regulation very closely so that we can really, you know, do it in a timely manner. And for us as a setup in our trading system, it's something we could implement, but they're also the registry today, the finest granularity is monthly, right, Aude? So I don't know if you want to add on this. But,
yeah, I'd say maybe one word from the registry perspective. There are already some pilot project or some rather small initiatives where you have further granularities than the monthly, I'd say, usual one. So geos can be issued on a day-by-day basis. No, that's true. But let's say generally, indeed, the cancellation is happening either on a monthly basis or even on a yearly basis. And I'd say from a registry perspective, I think things are possible, and there have been some demonstrators that showed that this is feasible. The point is to go indeed from yearly disclosure to minutes disclosure, or even hourly disclosure, seems also for me quite a big step that the industry is not ready to make. And I'd say the industry, the registries, everybody found nobody is really ready to have it on a large scale. But whether it is interesting and whether there is potential in it, I would say so. But indeed, I would say from our perspective, we think that probably before having something rather on a monthly basis makes more sense. So that's what was achieved in France. for us as an exchange, it's also totally fine if it's yearly, but I'd say monthly matching is probably something which is rather more feasible than going to a very, very fine granularity at the very beginning. So that would be generally our question there.
No, I mean, I agree with what you said. I think, look at the idea of bridging or narrowing the distance between when something's produced to when it's consumed. I think that makes sense as an idea and a concept, right? But to go from a market that is now that will be 1,050 terawatt hours large, to make that go from an annual basis to an hourly is just unrealistic, and it will essentially disrupt. I think now we have in Europe and in the UK, we do have the most robust DSC systems globally, and there's a lot of trust in them because they work, right? So if we would force that, and this change would happen on sort of timeline and terms that the market can't, one, adhere to, and secondly, maybe benefit from, then I think we risk destroying something that I think a lot of people and a lot of countries have worked hard to create. And then I think there's a lot of discussion about hourly matching consumption with our production with consumption on an hourly basis from a selection of corporates, but never do you really hear about what their view is on storage, which I find, that let's say in Europe, there'll be plenty of renewable assets coming online in the next few years, right? Don't get me wrong. But the problem will not be finding a wind GOO. Then, of course, you can match that as you want. The problem will be, what will that do to the grid? All these new assets coming online are intermittent. So the problem won't be getting of finding the perfect megawatt hour for your consumption. That's not how you will help the market. How you will help the market is balancing the grid. And that will enable further, of course, commissioning of new renewable assets. So what can the market do with maybe certificates? I think there is something corporate can do in terms of the different standards they adhere to. What can they do to incentivize the biggest growing part of the market, which is the corporate demand? What can they do to incentivize them taking part in having a more balanced grid? Today, there is nothing, I think, mentioned of that. There's only talk about matching on an hourly basis, on a more granular basis. And that's impossible to do that without having storage and, of course, then leading to a more balanced grid.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Also, the big push now is all about production. Even corporates, everybody's installing solar panels on the roofs and all, and nobody is thinking about the weight that this is having on the grid, which must be always balanced. Otherwise, then we have blackouts and all. So we are now experiencing very weird curve in the power market as well, and also, with granularity comes complexity, and most of the market players are still working with Excel. So it's not that everybody has like a super fantastic tool that allows to manage granular products. So working with Excel on granular products, and then some clients like energy distribution companies, they have the sales department which does one thing, and then they have the procurement department who has to follow. And sometimes they are selling something that it's very difficult to procure. So there are a lot of complexities, and maybe we are not just there yet. Maybe it will come. But yeah, for now, I also think that already moving from annual to monthly is a big shift. And also on a regulatory level, right now, it would be already good if all the countries, let's say I speak about Europe now, agree on only using guarantees of origin coming from produced for production period X to match with the disclosure for production period X and not for other production periods. So that would also be a first step before we start talking about hourly matching or 15 minutes matching everywhere.
I guess in that sort of vein, what do you see the market doing in terms of full disclosure?
Full disclosure is fantastic. No, I speak for, we are Swiss-based originally, so Switzerland is one of our primary market, and we have full disclosure since 2018. Is working well. Switzerland always had a sense of, let's say, a preference for a national product. But now with the full disclosure, we see that even more. And we saw also a push to really exclude technologies that are not, let's say, low intense in carbon. So of course, we also have nuclear, and our clients are also englobing nuclear in their mix. But we saw an increase in the demand for renewable guarantees of origin, and also there is also much more transparency. Everything is clear. It's also much easier for the end customer to understand the bill, because there is nothing that is left uncovered. So for them now, it's very clear that for each megawatt hour produced, it corresponds a guarantees of origin, and therefore supply and demand are balanced from their perspective. So it is promoting transparency and also awareness on the end consumer level. So it's definitely a good thing, and I hope it's gonna come.
No, I agree. I mean, they tend to be quite slow movers. Countries moving into full mix disclosure. The latest is France, applying it on the supply side, not on the consumption side yet. But I think it makes a lot of sense. I think now we're talking about exchanges and hedging behaviors and speculation and derivatives. But let's take a step back and understand what the geo product is, right? Its sole and main purpose use is traceability, right? It's a traceability mechanism. That's it. So of course, then having that across all fuels and all technologies is very beneficial, because again, you can compare them 1-to-1. And I think that's really how you can incentivize further renewable consumption, by putting it black on white in everyone's fuel mixes. So yeah, of course, it doesn't benefit the market, but they do take a long time to implement. We've seen that.
No, but I think for me, one of the biggest value of it is that it's then easier for the customers to understand how it works and so on. Today, indeed, how the mix are shown when it's not in full disclosure is more complicated to understand from a client's perspective. And I'd say on the full disclosure side, this is, I think, what is really bringing to the market transparency, better explanation, simpler mechanism, because basically everything is clear on how it works. So I think this is also something that we have learned from the past. I believe that we really need to try to have simple rules, and one kind of certificate, which now on the power side is working very well, I believe. More standardization and clear rules everywhere, so that the customers can really understand what we are talking about. So I think that's for me one of the key advantages of full disclosure as well.
Yeah, and I can only agree with the three of you. And on our side, so as we really speak to our members very often, and there has been request also, for instance, for nuclear geos, the possibility to trade them. I can also announce that in October we will introduce the possibility. So in addition to the technologies you can see on the slide, our members will be able to trade nuclear geos in a separate order book. So this is really highly requested by the market, and there we're also trying to do our best to facilitate the trading of nuclear geos.
Do we have any questions from anyone? Yeah.
So I'm Susanna from Reuters. I just wanted to ask how this market interacts with PPA markets, if at all, because we're seeing a lot of renewable producers having PPAs at the beginning of projects. Do GEOs go alongside PPAs? And I'm just wondering if we see more PPAs for bigger projects going forward, could that limit the supply of GEOs going forward?
Only men first.
You start.
No. I would say that PPAs are definitely growing a lot. I mean, I've been hearing about PPAs since I started, and for a long time they were really difficult to negotiate and conclude. And now I'm happy to see that they are taking off. And yes, GEOs goes together with if the PPAs is done properly, the geos goes together with the electricity. But I would say that they are not for everyone. So PPA, in order to negotiate a good PPA, I mean, you need a certain consumption size. So small and medium size customers are probably would have a little bit more difficulties in negotiating good terms and to even access the type of procurement. So unbundled certificates are, I would see the two word coexisting. So PPAs for certain sizes, and also in terms of hedging for electricity procurement, and also it has its own strategy, while unbundled certificates has another covers another type of customers. And taking away supply, to be honest, it depends a little bit. Now we are seeing a lot of renewable production in the pipeline in Europe. So I wouldn't say it's taking away supply, because it also takes some demand together with it. So there is, as I said, a certain type of customers that would go for that choice. So in order to procure renewable electricity, you have mostly three choices. So either you install the solar panel on your roof, or you enter into a PPA, or you choose an unbundled certificates. So this covers one of the three types of demand. So to the supply, it also corresponds to demand.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a massive word, right? PPA. There's so many types of PPAs. There are more types of PPAs than there are colors, perhaps. And what I will say with that, I guess, is there are, of course, the possibility. Let's say you're a buyer, of course, or you're a developer. You can choose to, of course, sell it as a bundled product. You can either only sell the power separately, or you sell the certificate separately. There are many shapes and mixes and versions of that. What I would say, especially, we did see a bit of a change in the market, especially when we reached really high prices. When we were around that €8 mark in Europe, and in only last year we saw £25 on Regals here in the UK, right? What did that mean as the revenues of those assets? Meaning, if you have a wind asset in Europe, it will produce two things. It will have the power and it will use certificates. So at that point, we were seeing that geos were representing about 15% of the value coming out of that wind asset somewhere in Europe. Of course, that could change a little bit depending on where in Europe, depending on the geo value and the power price. All right. In the UK, that was at 1.50%. Half of the value came from Regals, right? So what we did see at that point, and I think that has remained a little bit, I think also with quite low power prices, we do see, especially with corporates, we do see more and more corporates starting to look at the market separately and only looking at the GOs, and of course they deal maybe on the power on a slightly more short-term basis, and then they lock in the GOs on a more longer-term basis. The PPA product, if you want to hedge out your power exposures, it can be a good product for sure. But there are, of course, limitations on who can enter into that market. It takes years sometimes to negotiate. And it's, especially for those sort of small to medium-sized players, it's a very difficult market to enter.
I can say one word from an exchange perspective, but I will be very short. That indeed, from our perspective, we see PPAs being very key in the development of the power industry, and we have tried to put some tools so that hedging tools on the power side, so that we can already on the exchange hedge 10 years in advance already. So I think this we are doing on the power side, and of course our idea on the geo market is that indeed progressively we also want to have some longer term exposures. For the moment we are offering until year +3, which we believe is good for the market. But for sure, this is something we have in mind, that indeed geos and power needs to be hedged on the long term.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, one more question.
Oh, sorry, Sadie was first.
No, please go ahead.
I am Alice from ICIS. I had a question on spot prices and looking at the future. So you've mentioned all that we've seen a few years of really high volatility of geo prices. Part of it is due to physical evolution of demand and supply. We mentioned that demand in particular increased a lot, and the fact that the market was very volatile has fed demand as well, especially by generating hedging opportunities. But part of it, I believe, is also due to the lack of transparency and the fragmentation of the market. So going ahead, what exchanges are doing, such as EEX, will provide more transparency, which is likely to help market participants with understanding how prices evolve. And on the demand and the supply side, by talking to quite a few market participants, I can see that there is still a lot of uncertainty in terms of expectations of whether the market will be balanced or whether there will be more demand than supply in the future. So my question is, how do you view the market evolving both on the demand and the supply side? And do you think volatility will decrease as transparency increases in the market?
Just thinking, I must say, in 2022, we experienced something completely new. So the market in the past 10 years, let's say 10 years ago, the gap between the supply of guarantees of origin and the demand of guarantees of origin Europe-wide was, I don't know, 300 terawatt hours or something like that. I don't recall it very well, but it was big. And this gap made like this up to 2022. So it was already decreasing a lot. So meaning that the demand was growing faster than the supply. And then in 2022, we lacked 70 terawatt hours or something like that of hydro because of the very dry year. And this is where actually the market realized that might not be balanced. So there might be short. And this is also maybe globally on a European level, it was not. But then you have national preferences, you have product-specific preferences. So in some aspects, for some specific product, it was for sure short. I don't know. I take, for example, there are buyers that buy Nordic Alpine. No, I'm sorry, Alpine Geos. And this means guarantees of origin coming from hydro, from Alpine region. And in that year, this was something that was simply short. So Switzerland, for example, experienced a true shortage. And these type of events, I think they're going to come more in the future because of the global warming. So we're going to experience that more. And it could be that we experienced a year where we have not much sun or not much wind. So the fundamentals will be responsible also of driving the supply. And apart from that, I think demand will for sure grow, especially with the development of new products like hydrogen as well, which is very electricity intense. And supply will also grow, but it depends from several factors, and the velocity then it's, cannot forecast it. But
no, I think historically speaking, I've personally been involved in for now 11 years, certificates on geos in different regions and areas, but it's still today substantially more efficient and transparent than what it used to be. If you go back a few years, you could say that first of all, the market has been long since its inception, essentially, right? But it hasn't stopped it going from 10 cents to €5 and then hitting 10 euros at one point throughout that timeline. But you would say, even going back a few years, even if the market was very clearly long, it could still rally substantially. And why? Because it was down to a few handful large producers that would just stop, or that would stop selling or selling larger quantities of volume. And then thus the market will rally. Today, that's much more difficult to do. So first of all, there are some auctions, there are more players in the market, substantially more players. There are more diverse technologies. What I mean with that is that it's not down to a handful of, let's say, hydro producers. You have new players from the wind area, from the wind market. You have new players in the solar market. So it's much more diverse, which itself is beneficial for the true price of the market. So that's what you can say is that if the market moves today, it sort of moves for the right reasons, right? Mm-hmm. Not saying that there's no speculation, of course, but you would argue if the market really goes up today, there's sometimes it at least makes somewhat of sense. Same thing if it really comes down substantially. While again, 8 years ago, you couldn't make sense of it.
Thank you for this. I fully agree with what you just said, and I'd say I wouldn't agree that the fact that exchanges are coming means that there is no volatility anymore or less volatility, because, you know, you see, of course, on gas and power, you've seen extreme volatilities. And so it means what it brings is more transparency. So it doesn't impede volatility at all. But indeed, I would say the good thing is that it should indeed be linked to some fundamentals, which is what everybody wants in the market. Exchanges also come with surveillance of the market and making sure everything is working as it should. So I think it's really, I hope it's really a good news for the market. I do not believe that volatility will end because of exchanges coming, but rather that it will just bring more transparency and more understanding of why the prices move. So.
Yes, and maybe to add on this, volatility doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? So as long as it reflects the market conditions, I mean, that's how it then should be. So that's why I totally agree with Aude. And for the geos market, we also see, I mean, it's growing. The European market is growing really from one year to the other. We see new countries joining the AIB, new assets coming in. So that's why we believe, you know, this growth trend will, of course, continue and bring new players in. I mean, we're being contacted by, you know, prospects that are setting up their desks, that are looking into it. I don't know, financial institutions like are observing. So I think we can really expect that there will be even more activity in the coming months and years.
I think we've got time for one last question, Makani.
Yeah, sorry guys. Thanks for your information. Really interesting. So Makani from Emine. I just want to know one thing. I may be a completely silly question. Do you think geos could have a future impact on power prices, or do you think that should not happen just with increased volatility that we see in geos, increased demand? As you mentioned, David, that you see corporates really getting a lot of value from selling the geos in terms of their production. Do you think that could eventually influence power prices or influence corporates to expand more into renewables? Oh, that's for everyone, sorry.
Ladies first, huh?
I have a provocative answer to that. But no, this is a topic that we discuss also when we meet in the industry. And in some discussions, the way the market is going, so what is the goal? The goal of the market is to go fully renewable because we want to be free from fossil fuels now. So the day we're going to be fully renewables, then the question is, maybe the commodity will no longer be the power, but it's going to be just the geo.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, moving forward, of course, that depends substantially where in the world we are at, right? But I think long term, the value will probably be getting the electricity at point of time when you want it, when you need it. But then we're talking in the distant future, I believe. If we look at behavior in the market, I do see that, especially now in the last few years, where we have substantial, volatility. There has been cases where, some corporates, even some developers, have always been more worried about their green exposures than some of their power exposures. And that is, of course, a big change. Today, of course, both power and green is much less volatile than we were a few years back. But what I would want to say is that there is a clear understanding today, whether you are on the development side or if you're on the end consumer side, or even as a trader, that there are two exposures. Before it was power exposures, and then I needed to cover something green, right? But having, let's say you would have a 500 gig consumption, right? That could have been anywhere between a 250,000 euro budget to a 5 million euro exposure, essentially. So that is a bit of a rude awakening, I think, for a few counterparties. And I think today there's a clear understanding that you have both exposure on power and on green. And you are starting to see people acting accordingly to professionalize and strategize for both.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is it quick? Question?
Can I ask another
Yeah.
question? So you mentioned that hydropower is a key component of the guarantees of origin issuance. What I want to ask is, given that the power market, we are seeing also negative power prices, could it be that the fact that some sources like solar power are seeing their revenues going lower could incentivize them to issue more guarantees of origin? So can we see a shift from, let's say, a market which is dominated by hydropower guarantees of origin to more solar power guarantees of origin and wind power guarantees of origin?
Well, they would still require to have issued or produce the power to have the GO issued. So they could not say turn off the solar or the asset and then produce GOs. So they would still then need to essentially sell off the power on negatively and then cover and still have, okay, they will have a value for GOs. But I'm not sure that mathematics works, but you cannot just pick and choose on which one you produce.
And I'd say as well, I think now a lot of producers are asking for GO issuance. And I think, it's not so much, I think now most producers are really thinking, okay, I will ask for GO issuance. I think I don't have the figures, but I'd say, in most countries now, for instance, in France, we are at really very, very high ratio between GOs issued and production. So for me, at the moment, more and more GOs are issued on all production devices. And I'd say this, be it for hydro, for solar, and so on. So of course, depending on the ratio between hydro and solar, you will have more or less GOs for hydro and solar. But I'd say the decision to issue or to ask for issuance, I think here in most cases is already done, and people and producers are already doing it.
If the power has been produced.
Exactly.
Right?
And also, this is maybe something a little bit more strategic on a national level, what type of technology they want to promote. So for sure, they are putting some gas on solar and wind development, because hydro is more difficult to build up on new capacity. But that is also a strategic decision from the government. So in terms of renewable energy development, yeah.
I mean, now we shouldn't badmouth hydro production, right? It still has a very important part to play, right? If we're talking about a more granular environment, then the hydro is a very, very important part, right? It would be naive to think that only wind and solar and some batteries will save it. That's not good enough, right? And we're talking about hydrogen developments, right? Still a lot of uncertainty about any RFQB related projects, but still, RPO related projects. But there for sure, hydro could play an important part.
Yeah, but it's good to see also that the share of wind and solar is also increasing recent years, and I think in the past year too. So there is not such a, let's say, big gap between hydro and the other technologies.
Yeah, the way the system is built right now, I mean, I agree with David. Hydro is a must have, as it guarantees also the demand, the base load demand.
Yeah.
And as long as, so until we don't have proper batteries working, then solar and wind are difficult to manage on a power level, of course.
And can I have another question regarding the nuclear guaranteed of origin? Do you think the growing interest for nuclear guarantees of origin is due to a change in the perception of nuclear power, especially after the energy crisis? Like now, nuclear is seen more positive, and that's why there is more interest.
Yeah, I think I would say so. So, I mean, I can also report what we hear from our members or from the marketplace that we discuss with. So it's seen as a positive way to also be or for decarbonization. So it's a less expensive tool for market players that, let's say, were not involved that much in the renewables yet. So they consider it as easier to then enter the market.
Yeah, I think we saw a little bit shift a couple of years back, right? I think it was sort of a perfect storm. We had, and obviously one was a reaction to the other, but when we start seeing, 8-9 euro geo prices, and at the same time we saw discussions in the EU about, desperately requiring electricity independence in Europe, then suddenly the discussions changed in many different countries, right, about the perception about nukes. Simply put, they were not being discussed as being as ugly as they used to be or as dirty as they were only a few years back. So from a geo perspective, right, by first of all seeing that, okay, this is something changing here in Europe about the perception about nukes. And at the same time, if I only have to pay 10% of what a renewable geo were at the time, then of course that gained some traction and interest. Today, of course, we see substantially lower geo prices. So I think today that's we see less volumes traded, substantially less volume traded on nukes than a couple of years back. But I think that just makes sense. In the end of the day, people do have a budget they need to follow, right? And the mathematics needs to make sense. And indeed, when we started seeing 6, 7, 8 euros on geos, then people they used to start looking at maybe some alternatives.
But I would still say that the volumes are really still very, very low compared to renewables. So I'd say, of course, it's good to talk about it and so, but I would say at the moment, of course, we talk a lot about nuclear because it's also, not in the debates, but I'd say the volumes of geos on nuclear is so small that even when you see a graph with renewable geos and nuclear geos, you can't see them. So yeah, I think, of course, it's important to talk about this, but today the volume of nuclear geos is extremely small. And
in Europe, because Switzerland 30%.
Yeah, but you're on full disclosure. So
we are on full disclosure.
When you have a full
open to
disclosure,
European guarantees of
you need to have gas, you need to have nuclear, you need
even the choice, Switzerland, we cannot export, we can import, but still we rather use the in-house nuclear geos rather than importing more renewable from Europe. So it is 30% of the mix is still nuclear, even though we could have 1% renewable by importing from Europe. So there is an appetite for it.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everyone's enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.